All right, thank you for joining me today. My name is Alexi Bailey, and I have Chandra with me, and you're listening to the Tell It Like It Is podcast. Thank you for joining me today, Chandra.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to chat with you. It's been a while since we've actually almost seen each other. I say almost because it's a virtual, but thank
Exactly,
you for having me.
exactly. Uh, I'm so excited to have this opportunity. Um, you started with a question right off the bat, which was about, can you restate the question?
Yeah, so as we were chatting, right, the sort of norm in the room was I'm okay. I'm not too depressed. And so I'm doing good. I'm okay. And so it kind of normalized, right? This feeling of just survive, I guess, or just make do. There's the word, make do.
Right.
And so my question was, when did that become normal? And is that the life that God intends for us to just make do? There's the question for me.
That's a very rich question, right?
Hmm.
So one of one of the context of the answer was in regards to how I'm doing now, and I was saying with the pandemic, right?
Hmm.
So I do think there's a level of dissatisfaction we had before the pandemic, and obviously the pandemic exacerbates that. Um, but the goal to get out of the depression, it's a big climb, right? And
Mm-hmm.
within the African American community, there's a whole host of issues, but I think within America right now, there's a certain level of depression that's just normal and built in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that comes with the fact that, things aren't, we're not living the way humans should live, right? You should be outside in the sun and drinking water
Hmm.
and eating non-GMO foods that's organic. This is how you should live. So little by little, those things begin to get encroached on, long work hours and
Mm-hmm.
needing to pay extra bills and needing to take care of extended family and for letting the stress overwhelm you out of a healthy regime, and the normative culture of depression all around you begin to seep in, and societal oppression that you may feel, all of these things. So just, is that the life God intended? Absolutely not. And my answer to how you cope with that is community, number one. And
Mm-hmm.
number two, it's a very serious, you have to have a lot of self-awareness. Most of us are functioning addicts, functioning depressed. And if
Mm-hmm.
you tried to ask us about it, we would kind of just be like, oh, yeah, it's fine. So self-awareness means an awareness of where your potential is, and walking in that. So even if you're not at your potential, you never will be. But even you're not near to where your potential is. You're kind of saying, I know what I'm capable of, and you're constantly striving. So it's very it's it's very sobering work, and most of us just want to enjoy the moment and at the expense of the long term.
Mm-hmm. Or not, right? Sometimes we can't enjoy the moment, right? Which is where I think there's sort of this sort of base of the hustleism and the, like you said, eating improperly is actually not standing in that moment and enjoying it. Also, and thinking out further, what could happen, but then you lose the moment. And I think that it's part of it. It's part of it, right? To do more, be more, look like everybody else. It just it doesn't allow you to enjoy the moment. So if you, as the person that you are in that moment, right, and you're trying to enjoy that moment, and then somebody maybe your moment is outside, and somebody whizzes by you in the latest pair of gear, right? Now that sends you into something. Now the moment's lost because you've got distracted by something flashy and something maybe that's out of your range price wise, or not even needed. Because how much stuff do we really need, right? Do I really need that next iPhone and new pair of shoes? Like I keep telling myself that. So I, I actually kind of want to, if I had to say it, stay in a certain moment, right? And just enjoy it as that moment is, and then take the next moment, and then take the next moment. Where I struggle, right? Because yeah, depression for me is a constant crab in a battle, and in the basket type of a thing, right? One day I can climb out, one day it's harder to climb out, and one day some days I just can't seem to get from that bottom. Um, what I've found is I'm satiating with stuff that just doesn't matter. The sneakers, the trips, the hangouts, the whatever it is, right? I kind of lost my train of thought, but I'm with you, right? And just trying to think about again, is this the life that God intended for me, right? Am I living my best life? Absolutely not. In real life, on Facebook and Instagram, you might think so, but in real life, no, I'm not. And how can I center myself so that I am present and joyful in the moment and taking that, right? And then I think that that's what's going to propel me to get back to our original start. That's what's going to propel me out of this sort of I'm doing okay, and that's all I'm going to get, right? If I look around and I understand the joy around me, like you said, I am healthy, my mom's healthy, my son's healthy. um, that's joyous. Some people don't have that,
Exactly. You
right?
feel alone in the world, and
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so much of this.
So yeah, I kind of trapped off. You got to take me back if I didn't answer it.
No, yeah, absolutely. But so much of this is it's so normal now,
Mm,
right? It's not just you. It's not just me. Like this is the American story, and it's spreading to being the global norm. This
mm,
our culture of materialism and individualism. It's like spreading. The poorest people in the world are carrying iPhones and wearing Jordans and wanting Nike
mhm,
and these brand names. And it's gotten so normal, like we just, we don't even challenge it much anymore.
mm-mm. We
Yeah.
sure don't. We sure
Um,
don't.
so, so I always say this, the point of the podcast was, I have these great conversations and I'm like, I think other people need to hear this.
Mm,
And not so much because it's something they never heard before, but I think repetition is what we all need, right? Every day it's another day and you have to hear it again. You have to tell yourself again. Mantras are very, very important for everyone, right?
mhm,
And I just, I need it just as much as anyone else. I think
mm.
for me, like I just turned 40 a couple weeks ago.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. So, that's a big milestone. And I live in a town where the average home price is like $800,000. Okay.
Mm,
And most of my peers own their home, they have two cars and this and that. And, you know, 6 years ago when I was in New York, that I wasn't around that demographic, or at least in the same concentration. So
mm,
I think for me, moving to Princeton, I I saw how a different group of people lived, and to some extent, I idolize that, and I think that's something to strive towards. And then on another extent, I look at them and I'm like, well, they're not happier.
mm,
They don't have more community. The statistics say, I don't know this firsthand, there's a lot of prescription drugs and all these other things. So on the surface, you know, you may see more of the things you aspire to or think is ideal, but the reality is they have the same amount of stress, the same amount of
Mhm.
problems, the same amount of isolation and
Mhm.
depression.
There you go.
And when I try to connect with people, not just in Princeton, I find that, you know, we're too busy. This is like what the top five themes is: how busy we are. You
Mhm.
know, we're not making time for dinner with our neighbors.
Mhm.
We're not making time for dinner with our friends and these things. I think some people do a good job, um, but I think that's a big part of it. And if you have a perfect social life, you know, you need to look at the bigger picture and what's going on around you.
Mhm.
But I think we really have to get to a place where we're honest with ourselves and what God's plan is, and
Mhm.
talk to each other about that and strive towards that.
I agree with you. I mean, so here's the root, right? For me, right, grew up. Yeah, I didn't know I was poor, so it's hard to sort of attach that label to my childhood. Yes, we lived in the projects, and yes, we, you know, used government cheese and had went through all those programs, and yes, there was apparently crime around us because it is a project. But I remember joy. I
Where
remember. So this is in Rochester, New York, where I am right now. It's called Van Arker Projects, right? I remember it, projects that probably spans about, I would say, a good 2 miles, right? In terms of just from one end of it, projects. We had in the center of the projects the tall high-rise building, and so we would have these fights, one end of the projects against the other end of the projects type thing. What I remember from that time though was playing kickball in the back, hanging out and laughing, selling juleps, getting my hair braided on the front porch, laughing, right? Both my parents lived with us. My dad was pretty unhappy because he was, of the projects, he was one of, I think, of three men who actually lived in the projects, right? Meaning there were three full like families that had their mother and dad living in the same spot, and that pissed him off. Like it just made him mad. um, I get it a little bit now, but I won't digress. But I don't remember crime. I don't remember when I really think about it. Now, when I tell my story, right, it's a little more positive to say, you came from the rags, right, and you clawed your way out. So now it's hanging out to the awareness of it and the projects of it and all of these things, right? And so I didn't remember. What I remembered was community. I remembered that I couldn't go smoke that cigarette. My first cigarette that I smoked, I literally walked a mile and a half, was under the bleachers with my friend. We bought the pack of cigarettes from a store outside of our neighborhood, and I still got busted. When I got home, my mother knew because it was community. It was community. That's what I remember. And when I connect with those same people that grew up with us, and my mother was a great cook, and so people would come by when we had it, we would share it. And people talked about my mom's cooking. My mother did at the time, Jerry curls were popular. My mother did Jerry curls to put some extra money in our pockets and in our plates. I remember going to church and having that community. I remember community. I don't remember being poor. And then cut to climbing the ladder, making my own six digits and feeling very isolated and depressed because I was working constantly. I was always thinking about what I did not get done at work or who was going to judge me or how I was going to get in trouble, which is also my norm, right? But when I think about it, and I when I think about like the trauma I carry, right? Yeah, like obviously there was something, but I just don't remember. I remember community and I remember having fun. And I remember being safe or feeling safe. Now, I do know that that safety came in the fact that I was living sort of in this bubble, right? And because the bubble had certain levels to it, meaning crime, that I knew how to steer clear of it, right? So interesting that I climbed that ladder, right? That people say. I remember six figures at that time was something that you were supposed to, you know,
Still a big deal.
still a big deal. But I remember still operating though in that sort of same mentality because of, with living in that, coming from that background, I didn't have any money sense. So now, come tax time with no tax shelters and making money, I didn't even understand what I was doing with that money, right? And so one time I even said, like, I make way too much money. This is too much money. Like, can you imagine saying that, right? But what I was really trying to say is, I'm making this money, but I'm losing the money, right? Because I didn't know how to shelter it.
Right.
I didn't have all of the information. They just said, make the six figures. I did that. And then I found myself in trouble. I'm wondering why somebody who is making more than me is paying less taxes than me.
Right.
And the reason was I didn't have the knowledge to sort of hide the money. And I just remember never being content in the moment, right? Luckily, running came around, right? And so that was an area in which I could literally disappear in the run or the run group or whatever it was. That was literally what kept me on my feet. But there was no joy with more money for me
What kind of
at
work?
all.
What kind of work were you doing?
So I was a recruiter, corporate recruiter, having done that for 17 years, right? And so, and a corporate recruiter that was, recruited, right? So I didn't, opportunities came to me, and I had the opportunity to say yay or nay. I didn't even have to look for them. So, good at my job, but very unhappy, working around the clock, thinking around the clock, taking calls from candidates on the weekends at 11 o'clock at night, because I'm working through time zones.
Yeah, yeah.
On my days off, going into the office, spending the whole weekend in the office, getting caught up on paperwork or trying to protect myself and, the proverbial cover your butt, trying to make sure that I was doing all of that. It was just a mountain of, I'm making the money and then I'm spending the money at the same time because I'm not happy. So I got to satiate. Now I'm even more depressed because my house is cluttered. I don't have like a respite. Like it was a vicious cycle. But where I'm trying to get to as I sort of tell that story is I had more sense of community in that project than I did living in an area, lived in Highland Park, New Jersey, where people, like you, the houses were, one side was, yeah, you can buy a house for way cheap, but there's another side of Highland Park where, yeah, the same range in terms of home, a cost of homes. So where do you lose that? So kind of cut to where I am today, right? I left my corporate job to come back to Rochester and take care of my mom. And so that meant loss of income, loss of community, but not so much friends, right? Like just really loss of community, meaning didn't have those run groups, right? Didn't have that sort of section of people that I would gather with. And then in coming back, I wanted to get settled into taking care of my mother, right? And so I didn't immediately look for a job, like a full-time job. But when I started looking, it was tough because what I was getting paid in New York, they didn't want to pay me in Rochester under the guise of the cost of living is so much lower in Rochester, but it's not. Literally, a one bedroom is still, over $1,000 in Rochester as it is in New Jersey or New York. Food is still the same.
Right.
Whole food prices and Trader Joe prices and what Wegman prices are still the same in Rochester, they are in New York. To me, their gas is still the same. Like there is no reason that they could not pay me. And plus I was going to be doing the exact same thing. And in one case for the exact same company, but just, being more specific to the Rochester market because this company was in New Jersey and in Rochester and being paid, I'm not even kidding, not even half of what I was making. And so, I was a little cocky in the very beginning, and I turned down jobs, right? And then it's like, okay, I got to make something. I took a part-time job in an outdoor store, REI. And I took that job because I wanted to be closer to outdoor. And I also remember loving retail when I was younger. So that's what I did. Thank you, Mom. My mother's bringing me coffee. I love you. It's perfectly fine because it's better than what I was drinking. I appreciate you. And so took on this role, and it was fun and exciting for a minute, right? Because it's retail, right? I there is no grind. I can pick things up and put things down, right? That's
Right.
what it was supposed to be doing. But then like you got talent or you got ambition, and then now you're doing more. And so now I'm a little bit more engaged in this retail store, which I have like a part-time job doing this and a part-time job doing that with corporate. And now it's actually, now I'm grinding again, grinding again, right? But what really hit for me and messed me up was the pandemic. So as I'm now in this market, now the interview is canceled because nobody's in the office to interview you, and we don't even know the state of our company. I had some interviews lined up as we were starting to shut down around March 16th, right? Canceled, doctor's appointment canceled, dentist appointment canceled. I mean, it was just insane. That was insane for me. What I thought was going to be 2 weeks, right? At best,
Right.
turned out to be so much longer and so much more detrimental, right? To not only my community, right? But my work life balance and the job search and it just was insane. But I'm back at the grind, even in this sort of work that's supposed to be fun and pick things up and put things down, and afford me the opportunity to make sure that my mother's doing very well, which, by the way, she's doing so much better. So when do I get happy, right? So not happy making the six figures, not happy in corporate America. Now I'm doing this outdoorsy thing, which I really, really love and really enjoy, but still I'm just okay, right? So what is it going to be, right? Poor, right? Not making the money.
So what's your definition of happiness?
That's a great question, right? My definition of happiness. So when I think of, so my pat answer is I have no clue. My realistic answer is running.
Okay.
My definition of happiness is a marathon, right? And you understand this, right?
Absolutely.
I can tell you when I was the most happiest, right? With a marathon, you plan, right? You do the work, you put in the work, you set the plan, you have an opportunity to craft how it looks. So, much of what I don't like about corporate America or even working for other people is no matter how I structure it and what work I put in, somebody else gets to decide if I'm doing a good job or not.
Right.
Right? Somebody else. And generally it's the person who don't have their feet on the ground, who has no idea how hard the work is, who could care less because they're raking in the dollars, who has no sort of people skills to begin with. They've gotten their job because they've been great at doing a process, but literally promoted up the ladder with zero people skills, right? Who doesn't even know the full scope of the work, right? They were great at what they were doing, but now they're managing folks in a process that requires more than what their piece was, but they still don't know that other piece. They still don't know what it takes to build whatever it is they're building, right? So what was great and happy for me about running marathons was I chose the plan for me, whether it was aggressive plan or easy plan, whether it was going to be 16 weeks or 18 weeks. I did that, right? Then I executed the plan, right? Very much like I work every single day, right? I get a chance to take a day off if I feel like it. I get a chance to run a little extra harder. I get a chance to put in the work that's outside of my running plan, right? I get a chance to do all of these things, just like I do at work, right? You craft what you're going to do. You figure out, do I need more learning? So you bring other stuff in, i.e. the strength training, right? And then you execute, right? And now you're at the line and you go, right? So now the project is due, and now people at the end of that 26 miles, they get a chance, right, in corporate America to say how you do,
Right.
right? Aside from the reader boards, right, and the hours, right? At the end of a marathon, I'm still wearing the medal and I still got people cheering me on.
Exactly.
Right. But in corporate America, I don't have that, right? I've run the marathon, I've made it over the finish line, and whether I've done that in 4 hours and 10 minutes or 6 hours and 30 minutes, I've got somebody at the end of that who has not run that marathon saying I should have run faster at mile 18 when they weren't at mile 18. Should have started slower going up that Verrazano bridge. Like, you know what I mean? I've got somebody at 26.2 criticizing what I've done.
And they've never ran a marathon.
And never ran a marathon before. They've done a 5K and well, but now they've got their job to critique me as a marathoner. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm crafting this to talk about my happiness. I know it feels like I've gone off the Richter scales. I haven't, right?
No, I like that metaphor.
Here is where I am trying to live in this happiness, right? And I'm just learning it. Because as I'm training for the marathon and I'm pulling my group together and I'm waving at you as we're on a towpath, right? And we're training together different plans and we're seeing each other and we're happy, right? I'm with my group, Black Girls Run, or whoever I'm running with at the time. And even if there's some infighting, when we're running together, we're happy, right? Goal, cheering each other on, right? All of that stuff is there. I've got my plan. I know what I'm running is different from what somebody else is running, right? I've got my plan. And even though we're training together and working together as a team, we all have our different pieces of the pie. And at the end, we get to decide, right? So on those days or marathons where I know I had a training plan and I didn't execute that well, I go to that starting line going, I'm giving it my go. It's not going to be my fastest time because I know I didn't put the training in. I get to decide at the end of the 26, right?
Yeah, but
at work, I don't.
Right.
So I'm trying to pool my happiness so that it is about what I decide. And so right now, as I explain what happiness means to me, it is approaching anything that I do in my whole authentic self and being satisfied with what I gave it. One day it's 110, the next day, because I'm not feeling well, or maybe I've argued with my mother, it's 70, right? I'm putting the work in this project, and you, Mr. Never ran a marathon before, can critique it and say you didn't do the work and you shoulda, woulda, coulda. But where I want to be and where my happiness lies, if I sit back and I said, this is what you've done, and that was okay. You didn't execute that day, Chandra, but yes, your knee was hurting. So you didn't run the 8 miles, you ran 4. That's okay. And the fact that I showed up at that marathon start line and I finished at the end with the medal hanging from my chest and my miler on my back, I get to decide what success is. Now, when I can merge those two together, I will find happiness. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I know I took you off,
I love that metaphor. One of the biggest hurdles that came to mind as you were saying that was comparison.
Yes.
Like even when there's no outside boss, there's that inside boss who start comparing.
Exactly. And I love how you followed me on that, right? Because I did take us down a hippy dippy trail, but I love how you followed where all of these things connect to discontent and unhappiness, right? Comparing yourself, right? Now you're not level setting reality, right? That dude ran that marathon in under 2 hours, right? In those Nike shoes, and everybody bought those Nike shoes and wondering why they can't do it. But you don't know, right? This dude had trainers. This dude had nutritionists. This dude had pacers who kept him on par, right? This dude had a setup like you would not believe, to run under two. I can never remember his name. I don't know. I can't remember because I can never say it. But
Yeah.
my whole point is the comparison piece.
Right.
Just because I buy those Nikes, it's not going to put me at under 2 for a marathon. For me, it's not even going to get me past 4:30. Or, I might still be somewhere around 5 on a good day, right?
Right.
Comparison, yeah. And all of those things in between. And where you were going was that inner critic that comes from childhood traumas and people telling you you're not good enough, and systematic racism, and whatever else it is, redlining and all these different things, and not having enough green. Like, I'm starting to realize that part of where my disease is right now is the fact that I didn't grow up with a chance, right? And everybody kept telling me to hustle out of it. But also, nobody didn't tell me that I didn't have to hustle out of it. I could actually sort of stay in my community, right? And do better and give back in different ways than driving a Lexus or,
That's considered a failure.
Exactly.
You never left the hood,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Why is that?
It's a lot of, that's internalized. Those
Yeah, of course it is.
messages. Chandra, one of the things that I think about is, we know that, police brutality is real, right? We know that there is racist people. But what I find interesting is that it can happen to 10 people, but the effect affects millions.
Of course it does.
So the thing that some conservative, because I'm trying to understand this, there's a big conversation around all of this. The thing that conservatives try to say is that racism's over. There's nothing stopping you from doing whatever it is you want to do, that kind of thing. And to an extent, they're right.
No, they're not.
To an
It's not
extent.
over. I don't think there's a to an extent. Racism exists today. So if you think about this, right? If racism were over, then how come my son who is living in New York can't find a place to live? He's making a decent amount of money, right? Why can't he find a decent place to live? Right? Because it's racism. He's got to make 32 times his monthly income.
Right.
Right? If he can't, then he has to get someone to co-sign that makes 32 times the monthly income. I've already told you I quit corporate America so that he doesn't have that. Now, the area that he wants to live in, I lived in for cheap. He can't live there because of gentrification. So how is racism over? And that by design has kept certain people out of that community. So when I live in that area,
there's someone who looks exactly like him with more money than him who gets a place. So that's
right.
That's not racism.
It's racism still. I hear you. And here it is the thing, right? There are people who can sort of jump above it, but it doesn't discount it that it's there, right? You see what I'm saying?
I'm not arguing
racism
with you.
is there.
I'm just trying to understand, because there are really good intentioned people out there who are trying to understand this. And I'm trying to understand what they're saying and try to fit all the pieces into the puzzle, right? So what I'm trying to say is that, if you're a good person doing all the right things, you're able to move through in society.
Maybe, right? So here's the thing, right? I get you. I think on its face, it looks like it's there, but no one's thinking about what's happening internally with another person, right? I told you my story, right? I got by. I literally am oftentimes the only Black person doing something. I'm always, and I question, why is that? Why am I the only Black person working at a certain store?
Let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the dynamic like when there is a second Black person?
It depends. It depends on that person's
Right.
socioeconomic
Majority of the time, what is that dynamic like?
there it's a sense of ease because you have somebody else who understands you and you don't have to explain yourself. There's a certain ease where you can walk in a little bit more authentic, or especially in that space where you can just be yourself. You don't have to code switch. You don't have to, worry about if my hair is offending, if I'm, if you know what I'm saying. So you're not getting judged. So
So
on its face, it gets a little bit more comfortable because it's two of you now. It's not just you against the world. It's one more person that's going to back you up, if that person backs you up.
right. So what kind have you been finding support in that second person when they are there?
I've created support. What I do at REI is I am on the leadership team for our inclusion network. And how I got on that leadership team is because it got to be a point where I stopped trying to fit in. That I stopped trying to code switch my way through an 8-hour or 10-hour day. Right? I created the space as much as I could and with as much power as I had to feel comfortable in my space. When I started at my store, at that point, I think I was one of 2 Black people, maybe. Yep, it was 2 of us. And we happened to know each other. As a matter of fact, we called each other cousins because we were so connected by family. And then I got it where I could actually make that change, be on the interview panel, try to enact change within this tiny store and now on a broader co-op level, right? Of just trying to create communities. My job as the events and facilities person is to create communities. I brought Juneteenth to REI, big celebration and festival. My team helped bring the first celebration of Black History Month to REI. So I'm creating those spaces right now
And this is
for
within your
myself.
store?
This is co-op wide. So when I did Juneteenth, this was an event, a virtual event for every single one of our stores, from Rochester all the way up to corporate in Seattle. So this is the stuff that we're doing and the work that we're doing. And, it's hard work and it's not reaching, the reach is not where I want it to be, but I'm feeling better that I am at a company where there is an opportunity and that the CEO is literally trying to create an anti-racist society or environment within our store. And so if racism didn't exist, then why is there a need to be an anti-racist? You see what I'm saying? It exists. And so I hear what you're saying though, right? 2 Black people can walk in a room and they have a potential to, if they put their, if they do the work and do this, that, and the other, they can succeed. But I've done that. I've done more work than my peers. I've had my ideas stolen. I've gotten no credit and received all the blame. Like, this is what happens, right? When you're a marginalized person, whether it be a woman or a Black person. So
I think
it definitely exists.
Sorry to cut you off. I don't think the so there's many things, and like I'm
I
gonna,
know, I hear you.
so one of them is, it's not saying that racism doesn't exist in people's minds anymore. It's that the system is, it's racism in the sense that Chandra can end up being the CEO of REI in down the road at some point. So someone would say, if there was racism, if there was racism, then you could not climb the ladder, right? So that's one thing. And the other thing I was hinting at was, one question I had for you was, why are you not just automatically comfortable? Like, why is there this? Is it because they're not exposed to Black people? Is it because of misperceptions? Is it because they don't know any Black? Like, what is the reason? Why do you need to, if they've never seen someone from another demographic before, why don't they just say, okay, she's human, let's get to the work?
because of systematic racism.
So the
It's
messages are
because
pervasive.
absolutely. I mean, think about it, right? If you know, even now with all the work that I am doing in my store, and you know, I look even just on the retail level, right? Yesterday I worked on the floor. Today, you know, after our call, I'll hop on my computer and I'll do some other work, right, for REI. Yesterday, I am busting my butt to do a task, right? And as I'm doing this task and and and, and so I orders time frame. So all of the orders that come in through through the internet orders and store orders and all of those things, right? They're coming through and I'm picking these orders for customers,
Fulfillment.
right? And so either so I'm busting my butt and I'm looking around and I see folks chatting with each other, right? We are a team. My teammates have the ability to help me. If I'm looking for footwear and I'm looking at people in footwear sitting around not doing anything, they have the ability to help me. The whole store has the ability to help me.
Right.
Now, what I bring to the table is not just my own experience living in my community and that projects, and then at in high school being actually sent to a school in a suburb because the federal government said that these suburban schools had to desegregate, right? So now I am moved out of my community into this community that I have no idea and have no connection to at all, and then I got to take time and bus and get there. So I can't walk to my school that's close to me. I got to get on a bus and go to the suburbs, right? Which altered a level of confidence, right? Because now I got one foot in one world and not feeling accepted. I'm coming back to this other community that once accepted me because I was part of it, but now I'm not. And I'm coming back with different vernacular and speak and different experiences. And now I'm not accepted anywhere. So now I'm starting my life, right, in high school, unbalanced. I'm bringing that with me. My mother is teaching. She's grown up in Jim Crow, Alabama, at the height of
Yeah.
the riots and just chaos in terms of racial disparity. I'm bringing that with me because she's also taught me, right? And so now I'm in this area where I'm now in this store where you don't see Black people at all. You don't see them working there. You definitely don't see them shopping there. And
Right.
so, and now my outdoorsiness is different from their outdoorsiness,
Right.
right? You know, they've been in the woods and camping all their lives, and I've been running, and is just as outdoorsy and picking flowers and foraging. I've been doing that, right? But that's not the conventional outdoorsy for the
Right. Right.
store. So now I come with this level of confidence that's not the same as someone else who has been outdoors since they're knee high to a duck, and they're told the world is theirs. The teaching is, I know who my father is and my father's father and my father's, and here's the land that was given to us.
Right.
And here's this mass of wealth that we've passed on generationally, when my mother couldn't do that because guess what? Right? She actually does have land, but we didn't have that opportunity, right? Where there were systems set up where these middle class families making the same amount maybe as my mom and my dad were set up to succeed, were given loans to go and live in the suburbs. And my mother and my father are working all day long for us to live in the projects.
So you're carrying that with you on a daily basis.
You're carrying that with the daily basis. And now I've got people that's coming up to me. And even though I can talk rings around my colleague next to me about running, because, I do sell running shoes. I'm a run fit specialist. That's my job because I've ran in them. I've done multiple marathons internationally, right? And this person is, in footwear because they like sneakers, right? And I can run circles, right? But I have to give them my resume first in order for them to even listen to me. I can give them concrete dialogue about why this shoe is better than the other. And then I can have my colleague, who's a white male, say, I love those shoes. And then now they're purchased. where I'm spending hours and hours and hours massaging it and giving them information. And by the way, they're taking it in, but they're still not convinced that they can buy that shoe from me.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so when you get those kind of microaggressions happening, and then you're seeing you're working hard and you're giving your all and you're giving your expertise and what you've learned in years of experience, and not just with shoes and running, but life, not just even life, but now I've got some hardcore skills that this young cat next to me doesn't even have in terms of
life
skill sets.
Yeah.
Exactly, work experience, right? But he's being praised because he's worn a great pair of shoes to work. You've got the latest, oh my gosh, this guy is great, he's so great. Meanwhile, customers are sending letters and going up and telling everybody they know how much information they got from me.
Right.
But meanwhile, it takes this guy to say, I like those shoes before I can shut up and move to the next person. Right? I don't even get the same level of credibility as this guy does, simply because he shows up white and a male. So that's the hard part. And you're fighting through that every single day. And those little tiny microaggressions, they start to wear on you. Coupled with the fact that, you're told that you're not going to make it. You're told that, you're this and you're lower than. You're told to, shut up and put your head down and try to look as much and talk as much and code switch. How do you show up authentically and bring yourself to the table if you're not sure if your authentic self is acceptable? Right?
Do you think REI wants to improve because of a moral sense, or it's good for business?
So I think that in every company, there's always that aspect of what kind of business is going to bring. I guess just the world we live in. In my opinion, based on the work that I see happening, I think I lean towards an understanding of not this is a good thing to do because it'll just be good to do it. But I think what I'm experiencing is an understanding of everyone has stake in the game. And what you bring to the table, Chandra, as a Black woman, with your running experience and your work experience and your growing up in the projects and urban suburban school training, all of that experience brings something different to this garden. So I don't think it's a feel good for REI. I think it's just an understanding that we all bring something different. And in order for the outdoors to be beautiful and exciting, that we have to start recognizing that my Black body.
There's value in diversity.
Exactly.
REI has a real understanding that there's value in diversity.
That's my take, absolutely, in what I'm experiencing as a Black woman working at REI.
A part of my concern, and I've heard this echoed, is that businesses are doing these diversity things, because it looks good, and at the end of the day, you don't want to be behind the curve on the wrong side of history, that kind of thing. At the end of the day, it comes down to better business. Mm-hmm. One thing that I've come to realize now is that there's a lot of people, white people, who just want to be separate from Black people. And not just Black people specifically, but they want to be separate from the others. They want to live in a homogeneous community. They want to walk into REI, talk to a white person, they're not interested in diversity.
Mm-hmm. Well, it appears that way, right? It really appears that way. But if you really look at the real of it, right? So the other day I was listening. I don't like Rachel Ray. I can't stand that show. I just really don't like that woman. And what that show stands for. Again, it's the same kind of thing that you're setting up, right? She's in her white world and she doesn't even get it. And when she does bring on a Black guy like she did yesterday, and I'm hearing this because my mother's room is across from mine, right?
Okay.
she talked yesterday about curry, and she was going on and on about flavoring and curry and what Rachel Ray does. And this is my, I don't know her, I've never met her, but for her show, it grates on me. What she does is she appropriates, she takes all of this stuff and then she tries to explain how it's good to have it, but if you mix it or if you make it more sort of palatable. So she was going on and on and on about curry, and she was saying if she does her own curry mix because her way is the best way, is how she in my head hear it, right? She always, to me, steals from other cultures and then talks about how great she can make it as a white woman.
Right.
So when you say that, is that really true? Right? If you look around at those people who think they all want to live in a white world, they really don't. They really don't. Because if you go to them, they're eating foods from other cultures. They're wearing gear and they're styling themselves very much differently. And so my answer to that is they actually think what they really want is to steal what's good about all the other cultures, right? And still stand superior. That's what's really happening. So no, they don't, because that would be a very bland and boring world.
Yeah, they don't mind wearing Jordans, but they don't want Michael Jordan hanging out with them. Right?
But to me, that just says then that means you're missing the boat. That means really, if you really get to the base of it, you really don't want your white boring world. And you want other stuff in it.
People, they want to watch an NFL game, but they don't want you talking about riots.
Of course.
So right. It's not that they don't want us to exist somewhere separate. They just don't want us at their table, like sitting with them and that kind of thing.
What they want is the same thing that was set up in slavery, right? And in human trafficking, right? Let's call it what it is, right? Human trafficking, right? They want the benefits of the good food. They want the benefits of the beautiful home and the cotton picked and the land harvest, right? But they don't want to do that work.
Right.
Right? They want the benefits. And so what they really want, like you said, is those Jordans and to watch that football, but not have anybody but themselves benefit from it.
So deep down, I tell myself and I want to believe that, racism is on the decline. And I've had, different people give me different numbers and these kinds of things. There's still a lot of work to be done.
Of course.
This thing it's a big deal. I mean, if you look at oppression racially, how do you feel that compared to your gender?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many intersections, right? I don't know, honestly, in my own head, right? What I can tell you is when I do experience a microaggression, where no matter where it is, right? I'm always unpacking, when I shop in different areas, right? When I'm going to shop at Trader Joe's, which is in a very sort of swanky area of Rochester called Pittsford, kind of it really mimics Princeton. I'm choosing my Patagonia sweater, instead of my Gap or my Rider Tattered. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm constantly doing that, and I'm constantly trying to unpack that. But what I can tell you is that as I unpack it, I don't know what it is. And that's part of one of the other questions that you asked, right? How can't step in and just kind of be who I am in any place, in any environment, and just feel like I am. The answer to your question is I should be able to. And I don't yet, but I am working my way to it. And I am closer to it now than I was back then. And when I say back then, even a year ago, right? But I don't know, because when I start to unpack, why is this person mistreating me for no reason? Or why did I get that comment? Or why is this person following me, right, in a store? Is it because I'm Black? Is it because I don't have on my Patagonia sweater? Is it because I am a woman? Like, I am constantly trying to unpack. So I don't know if I could actually pick it apart.
Right.
Now, what I can tell you is
Feel
clearly
community.
you can see I'm a woman, and clearly you can see I'm Black,
That's double.
right?
That's double, right?
Right.
Um, but I mean, do you feel that there is a community with women outside of Blackness? I mean,
Repeat that again. Say that again, because you cut out for me a little bit.
yeah. So so there's all kinds of things happening at the same time, the intersectionality.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but as a woman, do you feel like you're in community with women, outside of Blackness?
No.
So now you're relegated.
Authentically, no. And that's the honest answer.
So I think as we get older in general, we start to go off into smaller and smaller groups. I think somehow when you're 5 years old, none of that matters. And when you're 20 years old, you can kind of be like, oh yeah, we're Gen Z or whatever, and just kind of, slang your way through it. And I think, on a level, everyone's Black and you're all good. But I experience like there's a certain separation. Like I want to be in a place with Black people, and I do feel like gender comes up. Like even when we're all Black, women kind of want to be with other women, and it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
you're a man, you should be with men, and I should be with women. And so then you get older, and all women start to break down into younger women, older women, and retired women. And so I feel this smaller and smaller groups, and it gets more isolating. I don't know.
No, I hear you, right? Like I said, my experience is a little different. I see my son doing it a little differently than me. He has a circle of friends that is like really just multicultural, right? Like literally people from different parts of the world, and women, men, and it started different for them. But I think for them, right, they didn't buy into the labels like I had to, right? As a girl, I wanted to play with trucks because I got all three brothers, but I was given dolls. And so I had to play with my brother's trucks, right? I wanted to um, do different things in my career, but felt relegated or, sort of boxed in because I was a woman, and whether I knew it or not, because I was Black. Then there's that education piece, right? I don't have a master's, and so like you said, you started hearing to all of these labels, and then in the end you isolate yourself, because in the end you just, after a while, when you get older, you don't really care, and so you just want to be comfortable. You don't want to be in a group where you've got to unpack all of these things or even show up pretending. Where I think my son's generation gets it right. My son is 23, and I see his friends, and I don't get it. Like, for me, why wouldn't he, as this child of this Black mother who, I wasn't as woke as I am now, but even you know even his take on life is through my eyes, which are not through my mother's eyes, right? So she was Jim Crow, and she saw that, and so it was a little bit different, and so it gets a little easier, I think, when you don't box yourself into labels, right? And it started with them. Even with prom, they went as a group, right? There was no way you went as a group when I was going to prom. You know what I'm saying?
You went with your people.
You went, well, yeah. And for my people, right, it was cheerleaders and football players. You see what I'm saying? Just all of these little clickies. And I'm looking at my sons, there is a little bit of a sort of a click in terms of just like education, if you think, and sort of jobs, right? And so there's that. But other than that, they're just different, all of them, right? They bring this beautiful, um, you know, elegant flower to the table, and now it's just this gorgeous bouquet. And for me, you know, it was like, stick to the roses, stick to the tulips. You know what I mean? Tulips can go here, roses can go here. And then the wildflowers, because you're poor, can go right here. But every day I forage for wildflowers and make beautiful bouquets. And it's just as beautiful as the flowers that the orchid that stands next to it, right? You just got to find the beauty in it. But so I go back to, I don't know. I think that for our generation, and I even think for my son's generation, it's where you're comfortable. But I think the comfort level comes with, how are you boxed in?
Right.
And for my son, he didn't stick to those boxes. I know we're getting late and I've just talked all over the place.
Let's take a really, really quick break. Thank you. Hold on.